Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, glad you're back on the Investigative Journal on this Wednesday. Greg Anthony here. And let me give you a warning in this show before I even start. Warning, you are going to hear dogs bark. If you don't like it, and you like listening to a lot of COINTEL people on other shows, then go right ahead and do that. But you will hear dogs barking because I can't afford a professional studio. That's the price you pay when you talk about the Vatican the way I have over the years, and also have been so stupid that you don't know how to really communicate on social media. I am really tired of social media, to be honest with you, and everybody's looking for this work-at-home job. What is more boring than sitting behind a computer talking to people all day? It's the worst thing in the world. I remember when I really was working on a regular radio station, you get up in the morning, you walk, you have coffee with somebody at the coffee shop, you go into your studio, you say hi to everybody, you got a producer, you got people around, everybody, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're on the air. And that's fun. Sitting here talking behind a computer is the most boring thing in the world, and I'll tell you, sometimes I'm pulling my hair out every day I do this, and wonder why I even do it anymore, for the little cash I get for it. But, you start something, you want to finish it. I guess I'll finish it the day I die. I don't know. But today I want to cover one story that came across my desk, and frankly, I'm tired of these stories. I've been doing it for over 20 years. And nobody seems to care. I mean, there's a few people on the internet who care. But 99% of the American people could care less if there's 80 million Vatican pedophile priests. And they're still going to sit in the pews and say, we have a good church, we'll make it better, don't worry, we'll work to do that. Then the Vatican will put out all these stories that, we've let everybody down, but we're going to crack down on this. They are not going to crack down on this. It's going to get worse. Pretty soon there won't be a Catholic Church, thank God. But they're going to create something even worse than that, a Luciferian church that everybody will believe in. And then everybody can come to church. The latest thing is that they have, this idea that men are men and women aren't women anymore. This whole idea spread about, they have now gender neutrality. They're going to have to put this on your applications when you work. So you're going to get a choice, male, female, or gender neutral. What the hell is gender neutral? You're neither a man or a woman? What are you? Put on there, I'm a rhinoceros, I'm a Doberman Pinscher. That's closer, How absurd will this get? Well, it's going to get worse and worse and worse if you allow these globalists and the Vatican Luciferian New World Order to continue this nonsense and indoctrinate your children with this all over the place. Well, the story today that I want to concentrate was sent to my desk. It just came out August 27, 2018. It's an old story. It's been hidden for 50 years, but now's the time to talk about it after kids have been killed and molested and whatever. But sure, let's talk about it now, and then let's have all the people in the that go to the Catholic Church or look at from afar go, they'll get better, don't worry. Here's the title: We Saw Nuns Kill Children, The Ghosts of St. Joseph's Catholic Orphanage. What's my experience with Catholic orphanages? I've never been in one, but let me tell you how close I got. My mom passed away when I was 10. I had a little brother 6 months old. And we were involved, and I was going to a Catholic school, grade school. The Monsignor came over one Sunday, thinking to help our family. My dad had to start all over, doctor bills out the yin-yang. He was starting a new trucking company, and had to sell our farm, everything to pay for my mom's medical bills. And so you think the Monsignor's coming over to help us out. We'll run a church drive, we'll run a bazaar, we'll run a, something to help your family out. Comes in the house, sits down, my dad sits down. How you doing, Monsignor? I'm sitting there holding my little brother, I'll never forget it. And the Monsignor starts saying, Tony, my dad's name is Tony, I think it's best we put your kids in an orphanage. Before the word orphanage got out, my dad stood up, grabbed the guy by the neck, put him up against the wall and said, "You ever say that again, I'll kill you." Then he threw him out the door. The priest went running down the street yelling, and everybody in the neighborhood was looking on. And after he left, a number of people came over and said, "Tony, that was the best thing in the world. What happened?" Everybody was laughing. "You threw a priest down the stairs. Watch the Catholic Church try to sue you now." Right. Never heard from that Monsignor again. But that's about as close as I got. They want to put me... We used to have an orphanage near me. It was called Boys Town. No, St. Mary's Orphanage in Wheeling or something near Chicago. Somewhere out there. That would have been great. What a life I'd have had. But anyway, thanks to my dad for not getting rid of us. But anyway, so we see this story. We saw nuns kill children. The ghosts of the Catholic orphanage. Recently, people are going crazy in America because, there's been this story that 300 priests in Pennsylvania have screwed over and literally raped and all this garbage with over 1,000 children. That's the tip of the iceberg. It's been going on for 50 years. Finally comes out? Yeah, right. So what are they going to do? Oh, here's what happens. Devout Catholics get on and say, "We're not going to let this destroy our church." Your church is already destroyed. It's always been destroyed. Get with it. Read some of the articles I've written over the years and talked about, along with other people who've tried to trumpet this message all over the place. I mean, maybe I should just give you a little list here. I'm just going to do it off the top of my head before we get to this story. And I do want to mention, though, this crackdown on Alex Jones on the media, the media supposed crackdown on Alex Jones, a.k.a. Bill Hicks. We'll get to that. I want to spend maybe 5 minutes on that. He doesn't deserve that, but I know there's some people out there probably wondering about it and don't have, I'm not saying I got all the inside information, but I do have a little bit more than most people. And I'll get to that in a second. But let me get to this story. So we're going to talk about the story that came out on BuzzFeed. Christine Kennerly wrote it on August 27, 2018. It's an old story. And the title was, "We Saw Nuns Kill Children, the Ghosts of St. Joseph's Catholic Orphanage." Okay. Why do these stories disgust me? Because, you know something? How long can you talk about this before people realize there's no hope? So you got all these Catholics now on TV, mainstream TV, going, "We're going to change our church. We're going to now make it good. We can't just let these people..." Who's destroying? It's been destroyed from the top down. Then you hear, I love these Protestants get on and they go, "You know something?" And these are the pundits. I heard this guy. I was about ready to put my fist through the TV. He goes, and he's on there all the time on Fox. He goes, "You know something? We shouldn't be too fast to pull down the hammer on the Catholic Church. Just look at all the atrocities that our churches have been involved with. Look at ourselves first." Give me a break. Get rid of all of them, because Protestantism is over. Where's the protest in it? And you go into these Protestant churches now, and it's like going into a rock concert, and then you get the bald-headed priest or pastor. And that bald symbol is interesting if you start looking at it. Giving you the hook 'em horns Lucifer sign, and you sit there and go, "My God, is he a Jesuit or not? Who cares? They're infiltrated." So you don't have anything. Get rid of all of them. And that's what they really want to do, because they want to usher in some kind of catastrophe that's going to then say, Jesus came back and we're the new church and come to us. That'll be even worse. That's the Luciferian Antichrist church they're creating. The one world government, the one world religion. They're getting ready for it. So if they destroy Rome, they don't care. They're going to build up another one. Everything changes, right? So you're not going to get rid of them, ever. So let's get back to this story. So then you get the big story. It comes out just the other day. Oh, we got to get rid of Pope Francis. You're right. Get rid of all of them. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to have another Christ on earth? How many do you want? You got Benedict, and you got this one now. How can you have two? That's my major question. That shows you that this whole doctrine that the Vatican supports how the Pope, became infallible, is insane. And so we got this whole argument now going that the Pope should resign, and this is high up in the Vatican now, because he helped a pedophile priest, a bishop or Cardinal McCarrick, get back into the church after Benedict censored him and said, you can no longer be a priest, you're going to, you can't talk publicly because you've got a dossier about a foot thick about your pedophile actions for the last 190 years, or however long he's been born and alive. And so then Francis, after Benedict decides, he wants to retire and play golf, he takes over and exonerates McCarrick and allows him to do everything else, send him somewhere else to do it. And so now they say, get rid of Francis. It doesn't matter who they get rid of. It's always going to be the same. They'll just put some other guy in there. So, when I do a story like this, let me just give you a brief history of how many of these stories I've done. And I'm not even going to... Let's start out with a couple of the girls that I'd met that were in satanic worshiping ceremonies deep in the bowels of the Vatican that witnessed them kill little children on a golden altar or whatever. Then we can start out about all the pedophilia I heard about in Rome. We can start about the street in Rome that used to serve as prostitutes right next to the Vatican. It's changed. Now they sell holy water and all this garbage there. But it used to be the brothels to the Vatican priests who just go over there and get serviced. And then on the other side of the street was the homosexual area. And that's changed. So that's just a couple little things. And then we go on to stories like, how about the sister that talked about rape and murder in the cloistered convents that we've done. And we did a huge story about her many years ago. Sister, I can't think of her name, but other people have talked about that. You think that would be enough? I mean, the story is amazing. She escaped, but she talked about how these priests used to come there and just rape these nuns, or the nuns would have to submit to. I mean, it's insane. That's not enough in these cloistered nunneries, right? And then we go to the Duplessis orphan story in Canada. We go to, and you just look up all these. It's all sick. Kids being killed in orphanages used by the Vatican and the governments to experiment on them with Nazi doctors. Then we go to stories like how they started their mission schools, the Jesuits in America and Canada, to genocide all these Native American kids. We talked, I had at least on my show, a couple of victims, and one girl who said she witnessed a priest kill and bury a little baby under an altar on one of the Indian reservations, and there never could be an investigation. They never, even years later, she was so frightened as a child, but as she grew up and she wanted to get justice, no one would investigate this, and there is no statute of limitations on murder. And then the stories continue. God knows how many priests all over the country, and the world, Ireland. You go to every country, you're going to find a number of them. This isn't just like, we got a bad apple in the basket. You got a bad apple tree that needs to be cut down. How is that for putting it? So anyway, I'm going to get to this. Let me check the time. And like I said, you're going to hear dogs barking in this show, so don't listen if you don't want to. And the reason I say that is because I've done it for over how many years, and I've always had dogs barking, not on every show, but on a lot. And now I just got more dogs. And I've had a talk with them before the show, and they said, free speech. Are you trying to... Yeah, here we go. They're cutting me down by saying, you're not allowing us to have free speech. We're trying to protect your house, and you're trying to muzzle our speech. I said, okay, the Constitution allows you to bark as well. So that brings to mind muzzling Alex Jones. Boy, and every time I see this story, I see headlines like, crackdown on Alex Jones on could fuel more conspiracy theories. Apple, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify. Alex Jones. Thank you. Thank you. Muzzle this guy all you want. He's going to go get richer and richer as he moves along. And the thing they're muzzling is the guy who works with them. He is their representative on the alternative media. And you can just research that for yourself. We're not even going to get into the fact that he could not even be Alex Jones. There was an Alex Jones before Alex Jones. And before Alex Jones became Alex Jones, or Bill Hicks took over, there was another guy, if you go back, and there's only a couple little references to that left. I mean, a couple videos of him. I saved one. A show that he was doing prior to the big fat Alex Jones on there now. And that gruff voice that he learned how to do. But the original guy was nothing like this. And I think they got rid of him, the CIA, because he wasn't as entertaining. And so then they figured, whoa, let's get Hicks. And somehow they had to cut a deal with Hicks because he's not going to do this for nothing. And as the years passed, I remember when I used to have a show right after Alex Jones on Genesis and got to know him, used to be on his show, not knowing he was a COINTEL guy then, but learning by being around them. And by being basically muzzled back then by him by not allowing me to speak about the Vatican this way, because years ago he didn't talk at all about them. Now he is basically talking about how there's a bad side and a good side of the church, Francis being the bad side. So, he's progressing. They have to change with the times, and he's their spokesman. He's their COINTEL guy here. So it didn't surprise me in the least when Apple, YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify shut him down. Why did they do that? Well, there could be a myriad of reasons. But one, he represents what most people on the internet think to be this truth freedom guy. Now, most people that get to know him will realize what I'm saying. But that's a minority. So what they're really doing is shutting him down. He's not going to ever get shut down. And the more they shut him down, the more money he makes. He's happy. Hicks has made millions on this. And I've watched him grow from the beginning. Well, he wasn't making as much when I had my show on that station. But I saw this kind of, popularity of InfoWars, what he did, how they set him up, the money they spent to get this guy going. This didn't come from his pocketbook and from the listeners. Let me tell you that right now. And I can tell you a story. Why don't I here for a few minutes, and then we'll get to the stories I really get tired of doing, but I have to do them because I've covered them for over the years. But back in the day, there was a couple of stations that were COINTEL. I worked at one where I used to go into their office in Round Rock, Texas, Republic Broadcasting. And then there was Genesis from a different town, but Jones was the mainstream guy on that. He was what built Genesis Radio. There's two big stations back then before YouTube, Facebook, and all this garbage, Spotify, Mortify, whatever we have out there now. And those two stations, I got to know intimately. One, because I came into the office every day. It was a beautiful office, a lot of equipment. And I was there a while, and what I said to myself was, where does this money come from? Because they don't have much advertising. And I know that most truth seekers are poor as hell and not going to donate the hundreds of thousands that must have been given to these guys to get this going. And so that came to me after I started realizing what was going on, and I got fired for being a one-trick pony. They said, you can't just talk about the Vatican every day. I said, nobody else does. Why can't I? And by the way, my show was becoming very, very popular. So they had to get rid of me, really. Or they gave me an ultimatum. Either you stop covering them as much and get on the ball here or leave. And I did. Well, I didn't leave. They shut my show off right midstream when I refused. And I look back on it and go, man, you're stupid. Look at all the money you could have made. Look at these guys. All right. What are you going to do? So Alex Jones, when you read about it, don't forget to look into the fact that he works with them So they're going to come down on the big guy here, and this is going to have a trickle effect for everybody else, right? First, it gives an idea of how many people really follow him. Secondly, he gets this bully platform now so that everybody in the mainstream can see how, oh, we finally shut down these stupid people who talk about these things. That's what they're doing, because I checked out on mainstream. He's all over the mainstream. He's in the New York Times. He's in the Washington Post. He's on Fox. He's on CNN. Stories about him. Coverages from both angles, everything. And did you hear? There was one guy on Fox that said, we support that. We can't support, we don't agree with the craziness of Alex Jones, but we can't support this shutdown of our First Amendment rights. And you can see that I agree with that, because I allow my dogs to speak anytime they want on this show. And they asked me, they said, hey, we're trying to protect your house here. You're going to shut us up, muzzle us? I wish they'd have muzzled Jones a long time ago, but they control him. I mean, he's in their ball game. He's in their team. So once you start figuring that out, you can look at it from a little bit different angle. Because in the end, you cannot have a global government, a one-world government, a one-world religion with freedom of speech and a constitution like ours. So it's going to be more like China. And nobody knows. Do you know in China now? You don't think these tech giants and this technical age isn't going to control you? And in China right now, there's 1 out of every 5 Chinese people in the world are Chinese. And they've instituted a way to control their population. They're beginning with it. And they're going to have over 600,000 cameras all over the place, facial recognition. And their main idea is this. They have a way of saying, quantifying you on a percentage basis, whether you're loyal to the Chinese government and you're loyal to China. And they have all kinds of ways to gather information. They're going to do it on all of their citizens, as many as they can, as well as Chinese here in America. And they've started on it. I've seen the tech, what they're doing. I've seen the little technical things. They rate people. You see them coming through a camera. Then they've already discussed that they get their facial recognition. They put up 92%. Based on everything they learned about this guy, he's going to be a loyal citizen. Now, the ones that go under, I don't know what the percentage is, but there are actual people in China talking, saying, if we got a 60%, we can't buy land, we can't travel. It's scary. That's what's going on in China. And they're also doing it here. Now, guess who helped them get this kind of, the technological know-how? All our tech companies help them. They're making money off this. And so the reason they're making money off this is because this is going to come to everybody eventually. What goes down in China, you got to watch, because it's going to come here soon. If the only question is not if, it's when. And I don't know. I don't think I can give you a date on that, but it's moving to that direction. And when you start understanding the control that these tech companies have here, Facebook, YouTube, all of these giants who have basically now put in these algorithms and all these different things to control speech. And so if your government gets called out on it, what they've done is they've privatized controlling speech in this country. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse, because you don't know anymore how they do it. You don't know if you put out a video whether it's being censored or not. But they do censor certain words and certain things there. And we know that for a fact. So it's very dangerous. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet. or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, yes, it is happening, folks. All of this is happening, as my intro stated. And boy, we need help, don't we? Yes, we do. And if I talk long enough here, I won't have to get to the stories that I really am so tired of talking about. The ghosts of St. Joseph Orphanage, nuns killing kids. Oh, boy. Priests raping children. How many of these stories can we take over the centuries before we realize that this is a sick Luciferian organization, and the real stuff that goes on, they don't want you to know about, so they put this out there. Yeah, that's what, this is all there, and then it takes years for the media to cover it. And then when they do cover it, they get it all wrong anyway. But one last thing on Jones before I do get to that story about St. Joseph Orphanage. Listen, they consider him a far-right website. Let me read from a mainstream article about this. Apple, YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify have all removed Jones' content from their platforms over the last week or so. and backlash against the conspiracy theories he touts through his far-right website, InfoWars. It's a far-right website? The media giants said Jones violated their community standards with his inflammatory content. Who are the media giants? Now, are they media or are they private? Is Facebook like the New York Times? Well, if they are, they should be held to the same standards. And even though this guy's a COINTEL operator, they shouldn't be allowed to shut him down. But they shut him down because he can be a real good example of what's going to happen to everybody else. And a lot of things he talks about, you can probably prove. But here's how it's depicted to Joe Average American who have no idea about this stuff. Jones rose to prominence by touting a wide range of unverified and demonstrably false claims. Now, can you imagine what they'll say about a show like mine, who has been called over the years the alternative to the alternative media? And what is the reason? Because we cover the Vatican-led New World Order. Now, can you imagine what people will say about this show? I mean, it will soon be labeled hate speech, commonly here. I won't be able to leave China or get by land, and people who talk about it won't either. And if they do kind of like what they're doing in China and can facially recognize you and then have a complete dossier on you, my goodness, I'll score like 10%. I won't be able to go on an airplane. People in China that aren't in the government, don't pass the government test, can't get on an airplane either. So they got on, they say that about Jones, he's unverified and demonstrably claims. Well, listen to what they say. He's argued that the September 11, 2001 attacks on the U.S. were staged and that the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2012 was a hoax to promote gun control. Neither one was true. Well, how do they know it's not true? That's what they say. That's the government's story on this. We know that 9/11 was not as the government said and was a staged terrorist attack by your own people. Yeah, supported by the U.S. government. That is a fact. So he can cover that. He's right on that. And then, but he's given this kind of publicity because everybody that reads it's going to say, who can say that 9/11 was an inside job? They're crazy. And who can say that Sandy Hook Elementary School was a staged shooting? See what happens? Now, it should be interesting because they'll settle out of court on this. The Sandy Hook conspiracy theory has landed him in court where he faces a $1 million lawsuit from the family of a Sandy Hook victim who says they've been harassed by his followers. Okay, who are his followers? Well, it's all far-right people. We got to get rid of these. How can he be considered far-right? He is one of them that's making people on the right or people that want to get to the truth look bad to the mainstream. They've used him all along. He knows it. He's being paid to be this guy. And that's where we stand today. So it's getting like China. And I guess we're going to follow China's lead when we see all the control of people, because they can't control a one-world government, one-world order without implementing their plan, and China is the vanguard in this, I believe. And we'll see what happens. Now, here we go. The headline is, "We Saw Nuns Kill Children, the Ghosts of St. Joseph Catholic Orphanage." And without further comment, let me start this story. It was late summer. It was a late summer afternoon, Sally Dale recalled, when the boy was thrown through the fourth-floor window. He kind of hit, and she placed both hands palm down before her. Her right hand slapped down on the left, rebounded up a little, then landed again. For just a moment the room was still. "Bounced?" one of the many lawyers present asked. "Well, I guess you'd call it that. It was a bounce," she replied, and then he laid still. For just a moment, the room was still. Okay, Sally, who was speaking under oath, tried to explain it. She started again. The first thing I saw was looking up, hearing the crash of the window, and then him going down, but my eyes were still glued. She pointed up at where the broken window would have been, and then she pointed at her own face and drew circles around it. That habit thing, whatever it is, that they wear, stuck out like a sore thumb. A nun was standing at the window, Sally said. She straightened her arms out in front of her, but her hands were like that. There were only 2 people in the yard, she said, Sally herself and a nun who was escorting her. In a tone that was still completely bewildering, she recalled asking, "Sister." Sister took hold of Sally's ear, turned her around, and walked her back to the other side of the yard. The nun told her she had a vivid imagination. "We're going to have to do something about you, child." I'm looking at a picture of this place. And it looks like a prison. But anyway, it says the back of the now closed St. Joseph Orphanage in Burlington, Vermont. Okay, so now we know what we're talking about. Sally figured the boy fell from the window in 1944. Wow, a good investigation here by people, right? It's now 2018. This is what we talk about here. It's never going to end. But let's read, and we're going to do this story, and then people that read it or talk about this show will be outraged, and many will say, "Oh, it can't be true. It's on his show." So, although I know nothing will change, let me continue. So, Sally figured the boy fell from the window in 1944 because she was moving to the big girls' dormitory that day. Girls usually move when they were 6, though residents of St. Joseph Orphanage in Burlington, Vermont, did not always have a clear sense of their age. Birthdays, like siblings, and even names being one of the many human attributes that were stripped from them when they passed through its doors. She recounted his fall in a deposition on November 6, 1996. As part of a remarkable group of lawsuits that 28 former residents brought against nuns, the diocese, the social agency that oversaw the orphanage. Why didn't we hear about this in 1996? Because the media covers up these stories. They wait till maybe 100 years passes. I watched the deposition, all 19 hours of grainy, sketchy, scratchy videotape more than 2 decades later. By that time, sexual abuse scandals had ripped through the Catholic Church, shattering the silence that had for so long protected its secrets. Look, half the secrets are still there, more than half. We are just at the tip of the iceberg. It was easier for accusers in general to come forward, and easier for people to believe their stories, even if the stories sounded too awful to be true. Even if they had happened decades ago, when the accusers were only children, even if the people they were accusing were pillars of the community. But for all these revelations, including this month's Pennsylvania grand jury report on how the church hid the crimes of hundreds of priests in Pennsylvania, a darker history, the one to which Sally's story belongs, remains all but unknown. Well, let me add, I've covered a lot of these deep, dark stories over the years. Many people know about them, but the people at the top will never let justice happen. They will live like they're in a fog. What are you talking about? This stuff doesn't go on. But it's the history, says Ms. Kennerly, of unrelenting physical and psychological abuse of captive children across thousands of miles, across decades. The abuse took eerily similar forms. People who grew up in orphanages said they were made to kneel or stand for hours, sometimes with their arms straight out, sometimes holding their boots or some other item. They were forced to eat their own vomit. They were dangling upside down windows over wells or in laundry chutes. Children were locked in cabinets, in closets, in attics, sometimes for days, sometimes so long they were forgotten. They were told their relatives didn't want them or they were permanently separated from their siblings, they were sexually abused, they were mutilated. But our government officials, known about this for years, have hidden it. And now the only thing that's going to get talked about is, don't spank your child, you'll go to jail. For a little spanking. But it's okay to let these kids eat vomit, put them in closets, hang them from windows, throw them out windows. That's all right. Because it happens, it doesn't go on. Not in the good Vatican Church. That's why all these politicians still run to Rome and still applaud all of the beauty and the pomp of the Vatican. It's insane. Darkest of all, it is a history of children who entered orphanages but did not leave them alive. I might add, we've talked about this many times in other places. And let me tell you this, it gets shut down. You think YouTube's you're gonna get 1 million hits on this? Well, we'll see. We'll see. From former residents of America's Catholic Orphanage system, this writer had heard stories about these deaths. That they were not natural or even accidents, but were instead the inevitable consequence of the nuns' brutality. Sally herself described witnessing at least 2 incidents in which she said a child at St. Joseph's died or was outright murdered. It's likely that more than 5 million Americans passed through orphanages in the 20th century alone. At its peak in the 1930s, the American orphanage system included more than 1,600 institutions, partly supported with public funding, but usually run by religious orders, including the Catholic Church. Outside the United States, the orphanage system and the wreckage it produced has undergone substantial scrutiny over the last 2 decades. In Canada, the UK, Germany, Ireland, and Australia, multiple former government inquiries have subpoenaed records, taken witness testimony, and found time and time again that children consigned to orphanages, in most cases Catholic orphanages, were victims of severe abuse. And on this show, we've covered many things: the Duplessis orphan story in orphanages, the many different situations where nuns were even raped in cloistered nunneries, as well as the genocide in the Jesuit mission schools set up to genocide Native Americans and Native Canadians. In 1998, says Ms. Kennerly here, a UK government inquiry cited exceptional depravity at 4 homes run by the Christian Brothers order in Australia. Now, my question is, why have they allowed this to go on? Well, the time isn't right yet to destroy this organization, to create their new Luciferian system of religion, which is coming. But maybe it's getting closer now. I mean, how long can this go on? Well, I guess they can go on as long as they want if it's hidden from you. So we got the Christian Brothers in Australia. It's heard that a boy was the object of a competition between the brothers to see who could rape him 100 times. Wow. The inquiries focused primarily on sexual abuse, not physical abuse or murder. But taken together, the reports show almost limitless harm that was the result not just of individual cruelty, but a system of abuse. Let me mention one thing. I get criticized a lot for saying the Vatican is a Luciferian organization. Then why, at every Easter service, do they open up with a Luciferian song, saying they worship Lucifer in Latin? In the United States, however, no such reckoning has taken place. I thought we were a country of laws. Do you think that it's not taken place here if it's gone on all over the world? Even today, the stories of these orphanages are rarely told. Well, we've tried here. It doesn't get much coverage outside of here, and they'll say, oh, this guy's nuts. Let alone recognized in any formal way by the government, the public, or the courts. The few times that orphanage abuse cases have been litigated in the U.S., the courts have remained, with few exceptions, generally indifferent. And I'll tell you why. Because they're in the pocket of the Vatican-led New World Order. Private settlements could be as little as a few $1,000s, Government bodies have rarely pursued allegations. So on a journey that lasted 4 years, this reporter went around the country and even around the world in search of the truth about this vast, unnarrated chapter of American experience. Eventually, she focused on St. Joseph's, where the former resident lawsuits had briefly forced the dark history into public view. The former residents of St. Joseph's told of being subjected to tortures, from the straightforwardly awful to the downright bizarre, that were occasionally administered as a special punishment but were often just a matter of course. Their tales were strikingly similar, each adding weight and credibility to the others. In these accounts, St. Joseph emerged as its own universe, governed by a cruel logic, hidden behind brick walls, just a few miles past the quaint streets of downtown Burlington. Bernie Sanders, where are you? Aren't you from Burlington, Vermont? Come on, man. When I start looking around, it seemed that all that remained of St. Joseph's were deposition transcripts and the sharp, bitter memories of the few remaining survivors. Well, you got about 5 minutes. Go get this story BuzzFeed wrote, and you'll see that a lot of the things I talked about 15, 20 years are true. Now, the Diocese of Burlington, let me see, I missed something here. But over the couple of years, this writer found that there was far more to discover, more than the formal residents themselves knew, and more than was uncovering during the 1990s legal battle. Though tens of thousands of pages of documents, some of them secret, as well as dozens of interviews, what this writer found at St. Joseph's and other American orphanages was a vast and terrible matrix of corroboration. The Diocese of Burlington, Vermont Catholic Charities, and the Sisters of Providence, the order of nuns who worked there, all chose not to speak with this writer, about these allegations. At the end of my reporting, Monsignor John McDermott of the Burlington Diocese provided a brief statement. Please know that the Diocese of Burlington treats allegations, they always say this, of child abuse seriously. Of course, they do? Yeah, and procedures are in place for reporting to the proper authorities. While it cannot alter the past, the diocese now is doing everything it can to ensure children are protected. For decades, Sally Dale, like so many other children at St. Joseph's, avoided speaking about what happened there. You know, when I was doing the Duplessis orphan story up in Canada, I found the same thing. Many of these people were frightened to come forward as children, and waited most of their lives. As Sally Dale here, she's upwards in her, looks like she's in her 80s. Sally Dale, like so many other children, kept us quiet. Many of the orphans went on to marry and to have children and grandchildren without letting anybody in their family know they were embarrassed that they spent any time in an orphanage. Imagine if remember the story I told about how cool, that Monsignor that wanted to put me and my brother in one after my mom passed away? Ooh, boy. Some they trust forever shattered, their trust, had been unable to forge any close connection. Robert Woodman, the attorney who sat beside Sally, had offered them a chance to be heard, to force the world outside to reckon with this. The world outside, Sally and Robert, don't want to know this. They would rather it be kept quiet. They can't have their belief system shattered. They need to believe in these things they were taught as a child, or their life will be shattered. Well, too bad. You weren't abused. You weren't put in a closet. You weren't tortured. Sorry if your belief system is a little bit tortured. That legal effort lasted 3 years. It cost Woodman's law firm dearly and pushed him to the edge emotionally. Decades later, he described it as one of the most wrenching cases in his life. For the former residents of St. Joseph's and for people in Albany and Kentucky and Montana who emerged from orphanage with similar stories, the fight was something much more. It was a chance for most of them to tell things that have never been heard before and believed. For the Catholic Church, too, the stakes were enormous. Well, anyway, like I said, I got a few minutes, so maybe I'll come back to this story, or if not, go to it. You can find it at BuzzFeed, The Ghosts of St. Joseph's Catholic Orphanage. We saw nuns kill children. Okay? Why do I say I get so tired of these stories, covering them? Well, my experiences maybe are different than yours. We all look at it differently. I've tried to get this story out many years and find nothing but complete apathy by most people who will not hold this organization accountable, who will not go the extra mile to listen to the victims, will not believe many of the stories that are out there because they don't come from the TV set or they don't come from the New York Times. And when they do come from those places, there's always this idea that this is not the general rule. This is the minority. Well, even if it was the minority, even if it was one, you get an organization that operates this way, why do your politicians and media support them behind the scenes? Why do you exalt these people as great educators of the Jesuit order? These nuns are all so holy and happy. No. You call it for what it is. And you don't, they shouldn't even be here anymore. They probably shouldn't have been here in this country from the beginning. I know the patriots that first came here didn't want them here. For a good reason. They knew this was going to happen. Once the Catholic Church got its fangs into our government and control it from afar. And we're now just learning about it. And, my question is, it's too damn late. And if it sounds hopeless, you see if it changes. And I bet you I could look down here 100 years from now and it'll be 10 times worse. So why do you continue to talk about it? Because it's the right thing to do. It's that simple. If it doesn't go any farther, there's nothing else you can do but continue to talk about it and to realize that what's being said needs to be dealt with, even though it probably won't. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.